Hello, everyone. Welcome to Development Palates and Pour and Tell Pairing Edition. I'm Aaron Loomis coming to you from the Drew Estate Studio. With me today is Seth Geis. How you doing, Seth?
Doing well. Doing well. Living life.
That's right. We have a fantastic show today. We are going to be talking about Highclere Castle Gin and Highclere Castle Cigars, doing a little bit of pairing. And we have some wonderful guests with us this afternoon and this evening. So I will begin the introductions. First, I'd like to introduce the 8th Earl of Carnarvon, resident of Highclere Castle, co-founder of Highclere Castle Spirits and Highclere Castle Cigars. I'd like to welcome Lord Carnarvon. Thank you for joining
Very
us.
much, Aaron. Great to be with you all.
Thank you. Also, Adam Gootkin, co-founder of Highclere Castle Spirits and Highclere Castle Cigars. Welcome, Adam.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. We have Louis Bernard, who is the Florida Territory Manager for Highclere Castle Spirits. Louis, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. And as always, the Wrangler extraordinaire, Jeff Borysiewicz from Corona Cigar Company. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Aaron, and thanks again for hosting this show and putting it together. I know I challenge you every time that I throw things out that cover two continents, but you're making it happen. I appreciate it.
We love challenges here. That's what we like to do. So, all right. So, gin and cigars, and I don't know that that's necessarily a popular pairing, but I think it's something that people should do a little bit more because I think we've been enjoying what we've been learning about these two products working together. And Highclere Castle has an amazing history and very popular. This is probably the first show I've ever done that my wife has had any interest in. Because talking about cigars and spirits has no interest to her, but as soon as Highclere Castle gets mentioned, the ears perk up. So for those who don't know about Highclere Castle, Lord Carnarvon or Adam, can you share a little bit about the long history of it, but kind of condense it a bit so that we can, I'm sure we could talk for hours on just the castle itself, but can you give a little background on the history of the castle?
Well, the castle is rather an extraordinary building. I mean, England's famous for its heritage, wonderful stately homes and ancient fortified castles. Highclere was built in the early Victorian period by my ancestor, the 3rd Earl of Carnarvon, and the architect was a guy called Charles Barry, who's also famous for building our Houses of Parliament in Westminster on the River Thames in London. And you can see the same style of the Italian Gothic towers and pinnacles. And that's from the 1840s. And we still love this building in all its glory today. And of course, it's seen many extraordinary and amazing people over the years who've been great sort of scientists, explorers, archaeologists, politicians, classicists, academics, musicians, people of arts and letters, you name it. And they've been having great cocktails and wonderful cigars here in this amazing library I'm sitting in at the moment over the years. And that's about it, Adam, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Yeah. And always impressive how you and Lady Carnarvon are always kind of keeping those traditions alive today and very much kind of celebrating Highclere's heritage. And I think in many ways we've embodied that in this cigar and in this beautiful gin, kind of liquefied it.
That's right. I think what most people know about the castle is from the television show Downton Abbey and the movie. But there's so much more to it. Can you tell us a little bit about what the grounds of the castle kind of consist of, other than just the castle itself? Because I know that there's some other components to it.
Yeah, but those who've seen the show will have enjoyed not just this amazing building, but all its extraordinary surroundings as it sits as a sort of crown jewel in the middle of this amazing North Hampshire landscape. The whole estate we're still lucky enough to own is about 5,000 acres, and it sits in the rolling hills of what we call the North Hampshire Downs, which is a chalk geology hill landscape. And of course, the castle has this really special 18th century park designed by Capability Brown, all this rolling grassland and amazing trees and woods all around it. And the iconic tree we have all around the castle in the park is the cedar of Lebanon that my ancestors thought to plant back in the late 17 and 1800s, when the cedar cones were literally taken from Lebanon and brought here, and they've done very well in our climate.
Very nice. All right, so let's talk about the cigars and the gin. So if I have my dates correct, did the cigar side of things begin before the gin side, the spirit side of the business?
It did. It was kind of an accident, to be honest with you. I didn't have any history in the cigar industry other than that I enjoyed fine cigars. And my history has been spirits. And that was my intention when I first was lucky enough to meet Lord and Lady Carnarvon, and we started building this partnership. And I was at the castle one weekend working on the spirits vision and the plan, and kind of getting to know Highclere from the inside, so to speak. And I'll never forget, Jordy made a couple references to all the people who had enjoyed cigars over the years there. And I came home and I ended up connecting with Nick Malillo, who had been a friend of mine. And of course, a world-renowned cigar blender and an amazing person. Yep. And a dear friend who I very much trust and respect. And I said, Nick, I had this crazy idea. I have no idea if Lord or Lady Carnarvon would go for this, but while I was there, I heard some stories. And Winston Churchill used to be a visitor of your grandfather, right, Jordy? And just interesting kind of tales of cigar connection history. And so I said, Nick, I'd like to do a Highclere cigar. I'm not sure if they'll even go for it, but I was inspired by the stories. And I was really inspired actually by the sense of where Lord Carnarvon is sitting right now. It has this wonderful sense of kind of this aroma of 150 years of yesterday's fireplace, which I love. And also thousands of books dating back to the 1500s that line those shelves that you can just hardly see behind him. And you can smell it. And I said to Nick, I really want to go back in history and see if we can't get, some invoices from Highclere, from the archives of the kind of cigars that Lord Carnarvon's ancestors were bringing in around when they were doing these really swanky parties of the 1920s that come to life in the Downton Abbey series. So Nick did some research. Lady Carnarvon found some invoices in the archives. He got his hands on the archives. It was a detour from the spirits. And a few months later, Lord Carnarvon and I were down in the jungles of Esteli, Nicaragua, like some scene out of Indiana Jones, tasting cigars, and the Highclere cigar was born. It was kind of a detour.
It was even more than tasting, wasn't it, Anne? Because we were actually out in the fields, seeing how they were growing these hybrid tobaccos and the rest, and the whole process of drying and fermenting. And then we had this blind tasting of a series of blends. And it was amazing that everyone went for the same one that we thought would be suited to the Highclere Castle sort of history and background. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, to just jump off that, this was amazing and actually rather symbolic. So we're finally towards the end of our time in Nicaragua, touring through the farms, inspecting the tobacco. Nick was showing us the specific batches that were being, pulled from the aging warehouse for us, the blends he was working on, which I'm happy to talk through. And we get back to the place and it's time to do the final tasting. And we've got tons of cigars. We're going through them, smoking through them all day long. And it was time for the group to anonymously vote on their favorite. And we all put a little number into a hat or a basket or whatever it was. We all picked the exact same one. And that was the Highclere Castle, what we call the Edwardian, the blue box, the Connecticut shade that we first came out with. So it was very much the same way with the gin when we settled on that recipe. So just fortuitous.
Nice.
So we had an extraordinary time in the short time we were there, and actually designing this box ourselves from scratch too. This amazing blue box,
a great box
from the local tropical cedar.
My mom, we go through thousands and thousands of cigar boxes at Corona Cigar. They stack up every day. But my mom has a note there. Any of the Highclere Castle boxes go to her. She's a huge fan of the show. And so her and all her friends that do these tea parties, they love that box. So just want to let you know that you have loads of women running around Florida carrying around these Highclere Castle boxes. And I think it's quite comical because they're filled with tea bags instead of cigars.
But it was an extraordinary tribute to the local craftsmanship and skill of the people that we could sit there with a laptop playing around with ideas, and these guys on these small machines could turn this within an hour into one of these boxes as if it was going to be for real. I mean, it was extraordinary, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. It's a sustainably grown cedar from the east coast of Nicaragua.
Very nice.
And actually, the project has started a real love affair with myself personally with Nicaragua. Now I go often, and I've got wonderful friends there, and it's a very special place to us.
Nice.
Adam, are these made in Eduardo Fernandez's factory, or which factory are these made?
Did you say AJ Fernandez?
AJ Fernandez, got it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just for all the cigar industry people, who would have thought, my lord, who would have ever thought that you would have teamed up with Nick Melillo? I mean, it's just one of these things where it's like, wow.
Well,
He's,
he all got on amazingly, to be honest.
Nick's fantastic and he's brilliant. It's just one of these things you kind of just don't see it, but then you're also working with Nick, who's fantastic with tobacco, and that shows in these cigars. So
yeah. I told Nick when I brought the idea, I said, I will not do this project if you say no. I won't even bring it to Lord and Lady Carnarvon. And then he said yes. And I'll never forget the day, Tony, that I called you and said, how do you feel about a quick detour from the Spirit Project? Let's do a really quick, let's do a quick cigar. And of course, you were totally into it with the Castle's history.
So, Lord Carnarvon, you said that Winston Churchill had been there at times, and I know a lot of politicians have met in the castle there. Was Winston Churchill like a regular, or what? Are there any stories about Winston Churchill there?
It was really because my grandfather was a great friend of the Duke of Marlborough from Blenheim Palace at the time, and of course Churchill was a member of that family and used to go and stay at Blenheim, which is just up north of Oxford. It's about an hour and a half away from here driving, and of course my grandfather and the Duke were good friends, and they used to have shooting parties there and here, and then they'd have people over for dinner. My father, as a young officer, had just been demobbed at the end of the war, remembers quite a sort of sparky and feisty dinner party here, where Churchill was in full swing and everyone was arguing about everything. And my father used to regale me of this story, you know.
So during World War II, was the castle was it ever under threat from the bombing raids?
It was actually, because of the blackout, it was lucky. It was in an area where it was less likely to be hit. But one of the problems is that when they were returning from places, if they saw something like this and in any way it was lights were on or there was a shape there, they used to drop excess bombs around the area, and one whole load of them fell only about a kilometer away to the northeast. So the castle was lucky on that basis.
So they were aiming for it.
Well, probably aiming for other things. They didn't really know what they were aiming at half the time in those days. We had, amazingly, not far from here, on the other side of our main road, about 2 miles away, there are some old quarries for lime, for chalk, which is used for all sorts of things. And the Germans thought those were some kind of secret thing, and that was bombed. And that was a total waste of dropping bombs on it, you know.
Well, that's kind of a good thing.
Well, just I don't want to get off the whiskey and cigar subject, but my 10-year-old kid is this World War II history nut. And before coming on the show, he's like, Lord Carnarvon, first of all, he knew all about the Egyptian and the King Tut and all that story. They learned that in school. But he goes, there's a tank named the Carnarvon, a British tank that's part of the Churchill series that's called a Carnarvon.
You know, that's the first I've heard of that. We're much more associated here at Highclere with aviation history and the Second War than with tanks, because actually, amazingly, at the time of just before the First War in September 1910, a guy called Geoffrey de Havilland, great British aviator who grew up near here, he persuaded my great grandfather that he could borrow his large flat field for a while, and de Havilland took off for the first time in one of his planes. And that became a fighter in World War I. And then eventually by World War II, he developed the famous Mosquito fast bomber, which is all made of wood. And they used to practice around here and that kind of thing.
Well, you'll be happy to know in Alaska, there's tons of de Havilland otters still flying around.
Well, yeah. Oh, of course, that's a great plane for local island hopping and out in the bush on the wild. Absolutely, yeah. He was an extraordinary aviation engineer, de Havilland, an amazingly inventive and brilliant man.
Wait, Jeff, so they still use that plane? They're using it in Alaska, so just for like little quick flights?
No, the de Havilland Otter is a big one. You can fit 16 people in it. They've retrofitted them with a turboprop. They got rid of the radial engine, and they're real expensive and beautiful and powerful. They're amazing.
But they're used for quite short takeoff and landing between difficult places, aren't they? They're great. I've been on them in the Caribbean before.
Yeah, they're amazing. They can carry a lot of weight and take off. Yeah, just like you said, short distances.
So good for flying in the Caribbean and blowing up Nazis
And Alaska.
and Alaska.
So Adam, in the initial blending of the Highclere Castle cigar, what kind of went into that in regards to what you wanted to come out with a final product? Was there any plans for making it something that would pair well with the spirits that would come later, or was it kind of on its own at the beginning?
I think that the commitment really first and foremost was to really the spirit of the cigar was to make a style of cigar that would have been enjoyed really in England in the time period of the 1920s. That was kind of the base ideology of the brand creation, to kind of honor the interesting people of that time that would have been in Highclere when they were, this was the Edwardian age when the great parties, kind of the end of a very great era before things kind of started to fall apart in some ways. And so I wanted to capture that, and I can't believe we got the invoices that we were able to find from the castle that showed the Partaguses and the cigars of that time period, which of course taste very different than the ones of today. Then when you add on to there, just I'm no cigar blender, and really the flavor profile and the masterpiece belongs to Nick, but the other inspiration I had was simply the castle itself and the aromas and the smells. Same with the gin, and with regards to the botanical gardens outside. There's something about that library that stays with me, where it's just got this aroma of that leather and that fireplace, and it's very charming and it's very distinct. And I think that we really embodied that, and I smell it. And then of course there's pistachio and there's some white pepper, and Nick really kind of engineered beauty around those elements. But it's also, in my opinion, it's rather different than a lot of the cigars that are coming out right now. And it is a bit staid, and it is a touch of a formal cigar. And I like that about it. I find it to be elegant because of it. It's not kicking you in the face with nicotine, and it's not, it's not doing.
It's quite mellow and smooth, isn't it, Adam? Really?
Yeah, it's a gentleman's cigar, and that's what it was kind of designed to be, or a lady's cigar, one or the other. But it's elegant. That's the idea.
Yeah, so Adam,
approachable.
I started with the Connecticut Shade one.
Yes.
I was on the show an hour early, unfortunately, so I started this a while ago. I'm almost done, but I have the
Victorian.
I don't know if the Victorian is a Maduro or is it a sun grown?
It's a Maduro.
Maduro.
Okay.
Yeah.
And question for you on this: what are the two C's? Is that your coat of arms, or what is that?
That means, and that comes from the Latin House of Carnarvon, or Comus Carnarvon, and it goes alongside our crest of the Herbert crest. So it's an emblem of not just the Carnarvon family. You will also see it around the railings of garden squares in London, in Chelsea, because it relates to the Earls of Cadogan, who own much of Chelsea. Sadly, I can't quite claim that one, and that would be fun.
And I noticed it on the bottle of gin too.
Yes, that's the same cross C's. Yes, absolutely.
During the design process of all of it, I was in the I was in the dining room actually, and I noticed the C's on the fireplace in there, carved into the wood, and I just found them to be very beautiful. And so we decided, once of course I learned that they were Comus Carnarvon and they stood for Lord Carnarvon's family, I just always found the artwork around them to be very beautiful, very regal, as they were decided that was the best inspiration for the band. You'll also notice that on the Edwardian band that you're smoking there, if you look around the edges, there's very subtle little dots of blue and red. If you see those, they kind of dot around the edge of it. The blue and the red are the colors of Geordie's flag that flies above the castle, but it also kind of, the way we designed it, it looks a bit Egyptian, kind of like something you would see around an amulet from Tutankhamun's tomb. So we put a lot of thought into an obsessive amount of thought with the cigar and the gin. I mean, when I say obsessive, like just, it's many years of my life to make it perfect and have everything be thought about and have meaning to it. And so that you know that what's on the inside is what matters most, but what's on the outside is reflective of what's on the inside.
Right. Well, it's a nice medium-bodied cigar, not going to overpower you. I'm enjoying it. It's got a great construction and nice, milder to medium-bodied cigar. So good work on that. Can we? You mentioned Egypt. Again, Lord Carnarvon, I think it's nice to know that school children here in America learned about your grandfather. And they
my great grandfather actually.
Your great grandfather. So
he was the extraordinary adventurer and explorer and adventurer, but he was a pioneer of a number of things. He was a pioneer of very early motor cars into this country, really the earliest ones that came from France, right at the beginning of the previous century. He's also a great pioneer in photography at the time, became very expert in photography, which helped him a lot when he was out in Egypt, of course. But he had a number of car smashes with these cars and turned them over and injured himself a bit. He was a bit of a frail guy, even though he was quite a brave guy. But so therefore he went to Egypt in the winters in the very early 1900s for the good of his health, really, for the dry climate. But he wasn't going to hang around in the social scene in Cairo. He wanted to get on and do something. So he became an explorer for a quest, really, a quest to find things around the valley of, well, not the Valley of the Kings originally, just around Thebes and Luxor. And he was thought to be an eccentric English crazy noble lord, and they gave him not a very good place to start with. And all he found in the first year of his works was a mummified cat and cat coffin. I mean, if you've moved thousands of tons of earth in 30 degrees Celsius and all the hassle to go with it, and that's all you find, you might quit, but he didn't quit at all. He got really into it and kept on. And eventually he found some very good sites himself around the tombs of the nobles, including a site of a guy called Teteki, a mayor of ancient Thebes. And then he teams up with Howard Carter, who had been an early trainee archaeologist right from the 1880s, for a famous English guy called Flinders Petrie. And Carter had actually been fired from his official position because of an argument with French tourists. Anyway, that's another long story. Anyway, these guys, Carnarvon and Carter, team up together, and they work very studiously and in a very scholarly way in Thebes, and write a book called 5 Years at Thebes. And then after an American guy called Davis gets fed up with looking in the Valley of the Kings, just before World War I, my great-grandfather takes the Valley of the Kings over. And nothing happens for a bit because of the war, and then they start again in 1918-19. And then the last year when they were about to quit, because it was just getting too much for everyone, they have this extraordinarily triumphal find of the door of the cut rock steps down to the tomb of Tutankhamun in November 1922. And they open this amazing tomb up. It's the only time an intact tomb of a pharaoh has ever been found. Probably one of the greatest archaeological discoveries ever. And of course, it's changed all mankind's view of ancient Egypt and their extraordinary art and achievement, really.
So I was watching something. Is King Tut's what would you call the chair that he sat in? Is that in the castle?
No, the golden. We have a great replica here. The golden throne is in the Cairo Museum, which is quite right where it should be in Egypt. We actually, in our museum in the cellars, we've managed to, not only do we have some real antiquities that aren't from Tutankhamun, but just from my great grandfather's collection. You know, most of his collection before Tutankhamun, which is massive, you can all see in New York. It's in the Metropolitan Museum. It was sold.
I was going to ask if it was in
1925 to pay English taxes. It's an amazing collection, Carnarvon collection. You can see it there. But anyway, some things were left behind here, and we have them on show. And then we built a complete sort of tribute to the two men in terms of a sort of discovery of the tomb and using fantastic replicas, which we sourced from around the world. And some of them are so good, people think they're the real thing. And yes, the Golden Throne is there. And for Howard Carter, the Golden Throne was especially poignant because as a young man, he used to draw the sides of reliefs and temples from Tutankhamun's father. There's an extraordinary site at Amarna where Tutankhamun's father, Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, used to be. And that's where Howard Carter began his work. So he goes full circle when he finds the tomb of Tutankhamun, because the amazing artwork in the tomb comes from the style of Akhenaten's time, from that period of high art in ancient Egyptian history.
All right, so we've gone from cigars.
Like haven't accomplished anything, man.
Right.
But
we've gone from finding
wine and spirit too.
How did this is what my wife asked. She goes, so we got this castle, we got this long history, we've got the cigars, and how did you guys get in the gin business? How did all this come about with the new gin?
Well, all I can say about that, I'll let Adam tell most of the story, but sometimes the most random of emails turns into a most amazing story.
So I had built one of the first distillery here in Connecticut to be built a little over a decade ago, 10, 12 years ago. And my family's history and spirits production goes back to the 1800s. So I kind of had a motivation to revive that. I've always loved distilling, and it's been a passion. And I like the idea that you're taking something from the earth and bringing it to life in an elegant way. And it's kind of, well, it's very much like cigars, right? I mean, you're farming. We call it, from grain to glass, or from botanicals to garden to glass. And I had a knack and a passion for it. And so we did well with our distillery regionally here, but it was a more of a boutique brand. And I had been looking for a while to do a very special global brand. But I also kind of felt that, so many of these brands that we drink are just created in corporate boardrooms and don't really have a real story or a soul, or even the word I use is terroir, which you typically only hear in wine, but really should apply to spirits as well. A place from which it came, a reason why it exists, or a reason to be. So I had spent about a year looking for where we could do the most amazing, perfect spirit brand that had this kind of level of pedigree and heritage. And my wife had forced me to watch Downton Abbey, which I got a bit hooked on. And then I learned about Highclere Castle from the PBS special on the real Highclere Castle. And I sent the email out that Lord Carnarvon's referring to, and he replied the next day. And a couple of weeks later, we were on a plane to go spend the weekend at the castle with Lord and Lady Carnarvon, my wife and I, and we just, I think we like any partnership worth doing, they're best started off as friendships, because you need to understand where everybody's coming from and kind of the spirit. I needed to learn all about the spirit of Highclere for real, and I learned about the immense hard work that Lord and Lady Carnarvon are performing to protect and keep the castle and the traditions that it represents alive and well, and their amazing team going, and the farming operation going, and all the elements that make Highclere very real, what it is. And once I got that kind of digested, I could see that the brand could be most perfect, because so many brands miss that level of soul. And then we embarked on the journey, and honestly, it was about 3.5 to 4 years, because we were so obsessed with perfection. Anything that comes from Highclere obviously would have to be. Anything I want to put my name to as well has to be flawless. And so we spared no expense. The goal was the finest gin ever to be produced, using botanicals from the estate, from the citrus coming out of the Victorian era orangery, to the lavender inspired on the nose that you can get, that was planted, as Lord Carnarvon mentioned, by the bishops of Winchester in the 9th century, to the juniper that's grown wild on the hills since the Romans occupied the area. All of that came together. We selected Langley Distillery, which is the oldest gin distillery in England, to produce this for us. They also host the oldest gin stills in all of England. So we wanted to connect their history with history, obviously. And then Highclere Castle Gin was born. Perfection around the brand, the storytelling kind of tells itself, and we're incredibly proud of it. As of yesterday, we've won 18 international double gold and platinum awards, and I believe that by spring or summertime we will be the most awarded gin in the world. And so we're incredibly proud of it, and the cigar as well. And one of the things that I love about this is, to your point earlier, Aaron, about did we design the cigar to go with the gin, or the gin to go with the cigar? We really didn't. Each one lived in its own sense of perfection. But what I have found, and I think Louis put this pretty gloriously a couple of weeks ago while I was with him in Florida, it's not a traditional mix. Scotches and cognacs and bourbons and rums pair excellently with cigars. But they also do something else. Because of the palate thickness and the viscosity of brown spirits, you do miss often complexities of the cigar, and vice versa. I find that gin is actually flawless for cleansing the palate to prepare for the cigar. And I find that the cigars, especially when they're a little bit more medium to lighter bodied, actually bring a spice to the mouth that awakens the senses to the botanicals in the gin. So I have to say, really, really pondering it now, I think we were lucky. We did not do it intentionally. I wish we could claim we had. But they make the most excellent partners. And it's non-traditional, which I think is kind of cool.
Very nice.
No, it's actually, Adam, you're dead on. The gin really complements and shows qualities that you typically would not see that would be overpowered by like a whiskey or a scotch or bourbon. So I just noticed this when you're talking. So 9th century Winchester. So you're in like Wessex, where Alfred the Great.
Yeah, we are. We're Winchester's about just 20 miles to the south of us. Yeah.
Goodness gracious, man, you got so much history. Jeff, I'm overwhelmed right now, man. Brother, this is just.
I agree. So,
yeah.
Aaron or Adam, I think what you brought up, which was very interesting, because we do pair mostly single malt scotches and bourbons and brown spirits in the cigars. But I must say this cleanses the palate and opens it up more than anything. So if you really want to taste the cigar, have some of this prior, and it really, or in between while you're smoking it, and it's like, wow, it intensifies everything that you're tasting in the cigar.
It does. It really does. And I like it because the botanicals are strong enough in the gin that they shine through, but they're still light enough to let the cigar do its job. And it's the perfect palate cleanser for a cigar. And the other thing that we're hearing from around the world too, that we're proud of, is that it's the first gin that you can actually drink on the rocks. I mean, it's glorious in cocktails and gin and tonics and the Negronis and the French 75s and everything. But to be hearing the feedback from so many connoisseurs that you can drink this on the rocks is pretty special. So what we're finding is that a lot of whiskey drinkers are trying this way, and they're like, oh my God, I never knew I liked gin. And where I say, well, maybe you don't like gin, maybe you just like our gin, but still, that's okay.
Adam, I think you're right.
Adam, I think you should go in that story as well, because it's a great story. In the fact that why it's the first gin we can drink on the rocks or neat, because you were not very sure about using that last ingredient you used, and apparently people love the story. So I think you should go and explain that to you as well, because that's why we can enjoy the cigars, is because we don't have to mix the gin with everything. We can just enjoy all the flavors.
We'll turn that over to Lord Carnarvon, because this is a funny story and very, very exceptionally different.
Well, we were with the master distiller thinking about just getting it finally right, and we have a long history of farming on the estate ourselves. And one of the crops we grow here, which grows brilliantly on our geology, are oats, which are more associated normally with human food like porridge and biscuits. But they're also very good for performance horses, and that's the specialty we have here. We really grow them for race horses and polo ponies. But anyway, I did say to him, because I know that they're quite a sort of smoothing taste, I said to the guy, why don't you put a small amount of oats into the basically final part of the distilling process and see whether that can just smooth the taste. And the guy looked at me kind of amazed. But anyway, it actually worked. And when we got this back, I just knew this was finally the right product. I could, even before I even tasted it, when I opened the little test bottle, I could tell at long last everything was smooth about the aroma and the taste. And when I first tasted it, it was just there. Do you remember that moment, Adam? I brought it over in the plane, didn't I? And we had a final tasting with all the gang on the 11th floor of the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. Sounded like something
It was amazing. We had 24 iterations of this recipe, and one of my favorite things in a spirit is viscosity on a finish, and it's rare on spirits, and nobody really knows why it happens. It's hard to engineer, and we were our 24th recipe. We loved it. I mean, it was great. It was 99% flawless, but it wasn't sincere perfection. We didn't feel, and we didn't know what to do. And to Lord Carnarvon's point, he recommended oats. We all kind of said, I've been distilling quite a long time, and I'm not sure that's going to do anything, but I had no better ideas. And sure enough, we were at the Bellagio at the IPCPR launching the Highclere cigar, as a matter of fact, with Nick Melillo and Foundation. And we pulled the sample out, we tasted it. And Jordy, do you remember the moment we tasted it? The Bellagio fountain lights started and the music started to play, and we tasted it. We said, my God, this is perfect.
It's divine.
We had the other competition miniatures out, and to be honest, in terms of smoothness, with the normal set of tonics, just nothing was touching it, the smoothness. So we knew we absolutely
Yeah.
for what we wanted at that moment.
Yep.
Very nice. Yeah, and the booklet that comes with the gin, with the recipes, the quality of the booklet is fantastic. For one, I'll just say that. But the classic cocktails that are listed through there are very nice. So I went through the process of most of them. So I did the gin and tonic, I did the Negroni, I did the martini, things like that. The recipes are fantastic with this gin.
No, thank you. They really are, and they're relatively simple. I mean, they've been made that way at Highclere since at least the 20s. Lady Carnarvon also found the archives constantly save us with great ideas. Actually,
Right.
all the answers are in the castle archives. But she found these handwritten notes from the butler in this beautiful script handwriting, and I always love looking at this. And this was before all these cocktails had all these trendy names. It was just dry martini or sweet martini or whatever. And the assumption is kind of that the butler learned from the previous butler who learned from the previous butler. And Louis, the head butler now, who's an amazing person and an amazing mixologist, he makes them the same classic ways. And so we embodied that in that little booklet, which actually people can get by going to our website and subscribing right on the front page of highclarecastlegin.com. And it automatically emails a electronic version of that butler's
Oh,
guide.
that's nice.
Call it the Butler's Guide to English Cocktails, because it really truly is.
So that brings us to something real quick, Seth. We got to let people know how to buy these things.
Yeah.
So we have a special package tonight with the on coronacigar.com. Aaron, I don't know if you have a link up on the
I posted it
there.
in the chat, so anybody that's watching right now has seen it. But yeah, go to coronacigar.com. Right on the front page, on the banner that kind of moves by, you'll see it. And yeah, you could pick up that. Go ahead.
So you can get, we have it's 10 assorted Highclere Castle cigars, 5 of the Maduros and 5 of the naturals in the different shapes and sizes, as well as a bottle of the Highclere Castle Gin. And we went ahead and included a couple of the Glencairn whiskey glasses.
Oh, brilliant.
The ones, yeah. So we have a special set that are made for all of our exclusive Corona cigar selections. And these were developed in the northern part of UK there in Scotland. So you have these 2 Glencairn glasses that come with the set. And so $189.95, and it'll get you the whole setup. So that's how you can taste the whole range of the Highclere Castle cigars, the Highclere Castle Gin, and a set of glasses, and you're in business. So I'm enjoying it. I've got the Maduro going right now, and it's just, look at the burn on this, and it's just solid construction, and really enjoying it.
Jeff, you need to smoke the Victorian with a French 75. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, right now I just using. I had 1 ice cube mixed with this just straight Highclere Castle Gin, and I have never. Yeah, and the thing is that most gins, people aren't going to drink them this way because they kind of have that grain spirit type of taste to it. That's not very refined. Tastes a little cheap, and that's why you got to put the tonic and lime and everything else on top of it. And but this, just the botanicals and the quality of the spirit that's coming out of the still, you don't need to cover it up with anything. It's wonderful the way it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
I'm drinking it neat this evening.
So. Well, most of the people don't like gin because of the heavy juniper flavors that come out from it. Highclere Castle Gin is not into that. We push backwards on the juniper, and we push forward into the citrus.
Yes.
And heavy, like nice quality, creamy smoothie hand with the oats, obviously, but it's more like in that citrus flavors than in the juniper. And that's why we get a lot of people who say, I don't like gin. I'm saying, try it. And they are like, okay, I'm a gin drinker now.
No, it's lovely. And it's a very smooth gin on its own. And gin, Louis, you can always say, listen, I live in the South. Gin is medicinal. It's just like bourbon. It's medicine. So you can always promote it in that sense. But the Butler recipes, I think what's great about these is the gin proportion. It's that it's a solid proportion of gin to this. So, Lord Carnarvon, that's a compliment to your family and also to the butlers, because it's not a soft drink in these recipes, and it's very good.
Yes.
Particularly, there's this one. I like all the cocktails in that book, and if I was to pick one that I would, I mean, I tend to be on an ice cube, but I do love what we call the British 75 because I think champagne makes everything better. But if I had to live or die by one of those cocktails, and I love the way Louis makes it, and Renee here in our office in Connecticut has mastered Louis's recipe. It's just a simple martini.
Yes.
And Highclere is without a lot of olive juice, with a touch of a very high quality vermouth, and just the bit of the brine that's on the olive itself,
Yep.
dropped in, just the fragrance of the vermouth. It is the most elegant, simple martini. And it's the way Louis makes them for, well, Jordy, you enjoyed them that way from Louis as well, I think, just the simple.
Well, you remember when we had the virtual cocktail party and we had the famous 007 Vesper martini here.
Yeah.
Because Ian Fleming was a friend of my grandfather and did used to come to Highclere.
Really?
Yeah. And in fact, it's quite a funny story. My grandfather was quite a competitive golfer, but not always 100% straight about it. And Fleming watched him drop a ball down his trousers to move it to a better lie once. And if you remember in the scene in Goldfinger when he's doing
yeah. That's classic.
Highclere Castle is a tourist attraction. I'm assuming you're open, maybe you're not right now, but there's a way to buy. Can they buy the Highclere Castle gin at the castle if they visit it?
We sell a fair amount here, as Adam knows, just in bottles, both in the shop and online, and we also sell quite a lot of cocktails. But it's also in the UK at the Waitrose stores and on their website around here, Amazon, and also a fast-growing site called winebuyers.com where people buy wine and spirits together, and it's fully available.
Is the castle reopened, or what's the plan on that?
We are, obviously it's been a very tough year and we had to close in the spring. We opened for the July, August, early September time normally, but at probably half the rate of people per day. And now we've had small tours throughout the autumn and into Christmas, and now we're running small Christmas tours 3 times a day or so, and they've been pretty well sold, so that's great.
So if an American is planning a trip to Britain, how do they go about if they wanted to shoot off for a tour of the castle?
I would say coming into 2021, we're going to be open in the spring, but it would probably be better to come into our late spring or summer tours. Really, just look on the website. I expect everything will be running pretty normally by then.
So Jeff, the way you book it is just go online and find your slot.
Okay. Absolutely, yeah.
Don't just show up, Jeff, like me, man, because then you just knock on the front door and no one lets you in. So I'm in the driveway.
Seth will do this, by the way.
Great Wi-Fi though. Great Wi-Fi.
No, we're open in the spring, but obviously we from in April, but we've got government restrictions because of the virus. We can only have so many people per day.
How did you guys get selected or chosen for the set of Downton Abbey versus? There's lots of castles throughout the whole country. How did this come about?
Yeah, there are. You're absolutely right. We actually Julian and Emma Fellows, they're old friends, and we've known them quite some time. Actually, we were looked at for his movie he won an Oscar for the script for Gosford Park. You know, you see in Gosford Park.
Oh yeah.
So it's a sort of not so different to Downton Abbey in a way. It's a society weekend house party and all the drama within it. But eventually they chose to stay near London for that. But then when they were thinking about this whole script and idea, they did come to see us quite early on in it. And then they totally disappeared for months. So we thought we were really out of the running. And suddenly when we were in Italy, in the middle of nowhere, luckily with a good mobile reception in Umbria, and we get this call from Emma, and we said, God, come back. We like you guys. We're going to do it in Highclere. So there we are. And that's the rest of its story and history now. But the thing is, Highclere's a glorious building for Julian's amazing scripts, because it's like a theater set for him. You have this amazing entrance appearance. We know when you come up in the drive and you come into this high ceiling saloon, and then there's a wonderful stairs leading down to it. The library we're in now, the drawing room, the dining room where they shot all these amazing meal scenes, and then all the rest of the estate where you can do things out in the woods and the cottages and the rest. So it could have been specially designed for it. In fact, we used to get frustrated in the previous years because all the movies were 18th century, Jane Austen in that period, which just doesn't suit Highclere so much. But then suddenly they had a script set in the an Edwardian, late Victorian Edwardian period, which is absolutely designed for Highclere's. In fact, they hardly have to have any props here. We lent them a building for a prop store, but they hardly need any because Highclere's in character,
Yeah. So go ahead, Jeff.
You and your wife live in the castle. So when they're shooting, how long do they like do a takeover, or how does that work if it's your home as well? How long are they there for?
When they're shooting here, it's very long days and sort of short nights. So I would get them in 6:30 in the morning and start opening things up and getting things out of the way and putting things down on the ground to protect for heavy cameras and all the stuff you can imagine. They've been here even earlier getting makeup done. And then Fiona used to help shut everything down at night because they didn't want to take all their equipment out always. And then we had these little helium balloons with lights on with LEDs now, which of course is good because they're not hot, but you got to watch what's going on with them and turn all the power of their stuff off everywhere. So and then by the time we would go to bed, late at night, and then we started again the next day. But they were on off, and in the first 3 seasons, they were on off from February in the cold winter all the way into the summer and finish in beginning of July. And then the last 3 seasons, they didn't use our bedroom so much because they copied them at Ealing Studio where they have the kitchen to be more efficient. So they weren't here quite as much the last 3 seasons, but still quite a lot. It was just amazing. We got to know them as family, really, the whole crew.
Did you ever do a cameo? Were you ever in it?
No, we were probably too much the other side, making sure everything was safe and.
I was gonna say, did anybody accidentally, like a boom guy, accidentally swing over here and knock over King Tut's vase or anything?
Well,
like that?
There was the odd little accident. You've actually got to be, even though you always want to be friends with everyone with a film crew, you've also got to be a bit tough and make sure no one does anything silly. There's a lot of these fabrics and surfaces and pictures are very, very special, and you really don't want a whole boom beam or light going through something, or something setting fire to something, or the weight of something so heavy it breaks through something, all that stuff.
Yeah. You kind of alluded to, I think, in that conversation about, I was going to ask, how much of the internal scenes were shot inside the castle versus, studio recreations, but it sounds like at the beginning it was very much all internal at the castle.
Yeah, right from the word go, they had to use a studio for the kitchen because they came and weren't with us the whole time. We couldn't just switch our kitchen just out for them,
right?
And have a lot of wood everywhere, because nowadays wood surfaces are banned in kitchens. If it's any commercial, you've got to have stainless steel everywhere. Mm-hmm. So that was done in the studio, but they did use the bedrooms on the first floor and pretty well most rooms, but not interestingly the smoking room. They never used that, so that was where we used to store surplus stuff. But then for the last 3 years, they copied those bedrooms and used them in the studio just for sort of efficiency's sake. But then there were strange things like Maggie Smith's dower house, because the dowager countess, she had a dower house in Surrey. But when she came to have a garden party in the summer that was supposedly having tea outside her house, that was back in our secret garden here at Highclere again. So everything's shot in software, so you can seamlessly join things together. And then they had lots of scenes out on the farm and the cottages when they were doing things, different stuff. Yeah,
because a lot of times, at least in the States, if they use a house for something, they'll just use kind of the outside shots of the actual house, and then everything else will be studio recreations. So it was very, very nice that the authenticity of the castle is actually in the show.
Yeah, they became very clever at how they did everything. And of course, in a room like the library, you ended up with 60% of it was just equipment and all the stuff, and then the rest of it was the actual cast doing this thing, and you could hardly recognize the room. But from the viewer's point of view, they never knew any difference, and it was always amazing. And they did everything with such incredible attention to detail. And the costumes early on, they were the ones that you would rent from a theater company or even eBay and the rest. By the time it came to the final 2 series, every single of the girls' costumes was made specially by hand for them, and they were that high quality. I think they've been on tour in the States. Yeah.
I think
Very
it
nice.
has.
Yeah.
So we were talking before we went live about the bottle itself and kind of what went into making that. Adam, can you share a little bit more about that for the people that are now watching?
Yeah, we work with a very prestigious design firm called Ignite, which specializes in doing very high-end custom bottle design. And one of the things that I do for all my projects is before we get going, I do a vision board. So I take a lot of unconnected materials that kind of make me feel the way I want the final product to feel. So in this case, we had taken, I had found things like a picture of Highclere's main tower, which is the tallest tower on the, actually, Seth, would you bow your head down a smidgen? There you go. Thank you. The main tower there, I selected a photo of that. Thank you, that's perfect. Some things like different cloths that I liked, and kind of one of the things that I love about the brand is a set of kind of understatedness, keeping it kind of simple. You know, it'd be very easy, as you can see, Highclere's a very grand place. You can even see the ceiling behind Lord Carnarvon. I wanted to kind of be grand without being ostentatious, and I think that the British are great at doing that, and I think that in some ways that's kind of a key component of the brand. And so we wanted it to be very simple and very elegant and very strong and very bold. And so with that, the design firm created a set of many different designs, and we tweaked over the course of a year. Then when going into production, it's difficult, but I can tell you, going through the glass factory and seeing, thousands of gallons of lava being pumped over your head in a pipe, and it can never stop moving, or if it stops for even one moment, it starts to turn into actual glass and solidify, and they'll lose millions of dollars of molten silicone and sand. And so it's a fascinating process. And then of course the molds have to be custom created. The shoulders have to stand up to being dropped or being set down on the table. So you have a lot of engineering. CAD drawings are very complicated. And then of course there's the decoration, which is in this case, it's a very rich purple that we selected. We custom made the coloring. So it's not from a Pantone, it's not from a color chart. That was important to me too. I was a bit inspired by Tiffany and Veuve Clicquot. I love the fact that those two brands have a very unique custom non-Pantone color. And so that was kind of important to us, that we had a color that was distinctly Highclere, at least in the spirits, this spirits kind of space. The other thing worth mentioning is, as you note with the cigar boxes, we chose the blue and the red, which are Lord Carnarvon's family colors, and on the flag and the coat of arms. And blue and red mixed together as purple. And that was another thing that I thought was kind of a fun nod to the cigars, in the sense that this is kind of bringing it all together, and now with the original intention of the project. So we tweak, it's all about a million tweaks. It's the blend, like with the cigar, the band took many months of tweaking the design to get it perfect. The box took tweaks, the recipes, the blends took many tweaks, the gin took many tweaks, and then finally the design of the bottle, and then bringing it to life.
Very nice.
And we keep with both the cigars and with the gin. When you're working with a manufacturer, you have to set a threshold of quality control, both on the cigars with regards to how much we're willing to let a cigar go through that has maybe a soft spot or a hard spot. I'm sure you've encountered many cigars in your days that have had a little bit of a soft spot where it starts to canoe or what have you. The same with the gin bottle. If it's a little smudged, do we let that go through? On both the gin and our cigars, we have the threshold set at the absolute minimum, which means we have a lot of waste. A lot of Highclere cigars, if they're not flawless, they don't make the cut, and they end up going back into being chopped.
And what's the method for the printing on the bottle itself? Is it like a stencil, or is it a paint, or how is that applied to the bottles? Oh, sorry.
The actual bottles are placed on a stand where they're sprayed the purple.
Okay.
And it's printed over with the white lettering.
No.
Nice.
Oh, fuck.
Louis,
So
Louis,
real
we can hear
quick,
you, but not see.
Oh, Louis.
before Highclere Castle was a
I got
castle.
some. Sorry
There you
about
go.
it. I got some issues over there.
Problem.
So
What were you saying?
before Highclere Castle was a castle, wasn't it a church at one time?
Well, it was in the medieval period, in the around 1360, 1370. William of Wykeham, the Bishop of Winchester, had a summer palace here, and in fact, the fireplace area around the great saloon you come into was the sort of center of that building. Rather amazingly.
And
So
when you said that the robe was from earlier, you were alluding to the color purple was from a robe.
The early bishops used to have these purple robes.
Were those bishops that were staying at Highclere, or actually lived at Highclere? Or what
Yeah, well, William of Wykeham was must have been one of the second or third most powerful man in the country at the time, and he helped build Windsor Castle, Winchester College in Winchester, and then was also famous for the first Oxford College called New College. And to do that, he cut quite a lot of oak down from here at Highclere. That's about 1360 period, and he was one of the people who managed to survive the Black Death, which was a miracle in its own right too. The great early pandemic of the
plague, yeah.
So this was before America was discovered. We're not used to stuff going back that far here.
Well, I think we were just, what was this, 1300?
1360, 70 or so, yeah.
Yeah, 1492 is when we got
Eric,
you don't
no,
talk
the Vikings.
No.
Okay, there you go, Seth. You've been watching that. What's that show they have in Canada where they're digging in that island all that time? The Oak Island thing.
Oh yeah.
No, wasn't Eric? Eric was what, 800 AD, 800 to 900 AD. Same time during the Vikings invasion of England, which Winchester Wexus Alfred was the one who basically kept things going. We wouldn't have the gin without Alfred.
Thank
we
you,
have
Alfred.
a lot of things. Yeah, exactly.
He was around in about the 840s or so. Yes.
Yeah. Either way, yeah, long before United States of America.
But Highclere would have been very heavily wooded and forested in those days. And of course, man over the centuries has changed the landscape with different farming systems, and of course, sheep became incredibly important around here. And during the time of the British Civil War, they were like the sort of gold dust. That's something that people were fighting over economic trade routes where sheep were going to go.
Which Civil War? Our Civil War or your Cromwell?
Our one with King Charles.
With Oliver Cromwell. Yeah.
We got this extraordinary painting in our dining room. You might have seen if you've seen the show, which is by the Dutch master Van Dyck, and it's King Charles on his horse at the gates of Paris with his servant. It's rather an amazing, enormous painting, and it comes from my cousins, the Pembroke family near Salisbury at Wilton House. And during the time of the Parliament, they had to remove it from the house because you weren't allowed to have that kind of painting around. But then,
I was about to say, what did you do with that when Parliament was during that time? Did you hide it, or
my ancestors had done a sort of deal to keep things peaceful with this new outrageous regime, and the painting was filled up in a barn. And then when my ancestor Robert Herbert came here, he asked his older brother, the Earl of Pembroke, whether he could bring the painting from the barn to Highclere, and that's why it's with us.
Always
Lord Carnarvon,
local officials.
So if that was a church at one time, was there like a burial ground there as well?
Yes, you can. We have a crypt just off the side of the castle where you can find the femur thigh bones of sturdy yeomen from medieval times still.
Wow.
Have you seen any ghosts?
Well, my wife is more of an expert at seeing ghosts. She's definitely come across them in around the castle, and I've had a Labrador who was rather of the mode of Scooby-Doo in the past, who also definitely found one day right by a door. It had a complete fit and wouldn't, having 50 fits, it wouldn't go through and pass, and there was nothing the other side. But there you are.
Wow.
So, would you consider them friendly ghosts or just?
I think they're probably friendly to the extent, but they probably disturb people from the past who've been upset and haven't really moved on. And we actually had an Anglican priest come and bless one area to move one spirit on, which seemed to have worked.
There you go.
Highclere,
Jeff,
there's an energy inside the castle that is really very beautiful and peaceful. I've never, you know, as kind of an outsider, having spent a lot of time there, I've never gotten any of the heebie-jeebie vibes in the castle, anything other than warmth and you know, really great.
There are friendly ghosts.
If all of you want to have some wonderful Christmas recipes for food to go alongside the great gin and cigars, I strongly can recommend my wife's book, Christmas at Highclere, which is a bit of a history at Christmas in the UK, and especially around Highclere. And it has some fantastic winter recipes of soups and meat and sweets, and also cocktails with the gin and stories about Highclere. And I think people would enjoy that. That's just another thing for Christmas to buy alongside the great cigars and the gin.
Do you guys do special Christmas tours during normal years? Is the castle all decorated up when there's special?
It's all decorated up now. I haven't probably. I'm not good enough with the way this. There's a Christmas tree right there. You see in the
looks great.
And there's even things like we have these. There's a plant arrangement too. Also, they're all over around the castle. We make a massive. There's a 23-foot Christmas tree in the front room. So our Christmas tours this December, which are all very sort of COVID compliant, they're pretty well sold out, and people end with a nice some nice food of different types and champagne, and they often go off with a bottle of gin.
Nice.
Oh, you should give them gin on the tour. They'll go off with multiple bottles of gin.
Actually, the gin has been going especially well for all the people coming to the castle recently, and online, to be honest. Even though, of course, unlike Amazon, we have to charge shipping charges. So I'm amazed. It's gone fantastic, really.
Listen, it's a pandemic, and gin saves lives. So people.
That's right. It's medicine, right?
It's medicine. It's medicine.
Yeah.
So, Adam, what's the current distribution of the gin in the United States?
We're 25 U.S. states approximately.
Okay.
Is it predominantly like
Northeast
Northeast or East Coast?
Predominantly East Coast and quite a bit of Midwest. You know, from Tennessee and Kentucky up to Illinois. Michigan's a strong place for us. Now we're kind of heading further west from there. We're doing working on kind of Wyoming right now. We're working on California. Will be launching very soon. We're very strong in Texas, very strong, getting strong in Florida with partners like you guys, and of course available nationwide. You can, Jeff, you guys are shipping nationwide the gin and the cigar package.
And also, so if people come by to any of the Corona cigar stores, the cigar bars, and our Davidoff store in Tampa, we have it. You know, where you can have it. You know, buy it by the glass and taste it and try it in different cocktails. So I'm real excited about it. As having multiple bars that deal in a lot of high-end whiskeys. The gin category has been one that has, I don't want to say it's been neglected, but it hasn't had the super premium gins out there. That's been a very narrow market. And I'm really excited that the Highclere Castle brand is out, but also the background behind it. You know, you can't get much more luxurious than the Highclere Castle, right? We're real excited about having that.
Appreciate that you recognize that we have put so much into it, and you know, one of the things that there's a great beauty that Downton Abbey brought to Highclere, and so much that it's done for Highclere, but we also wanted to make sure that you know, this is about celebrating Highclere Castle. And we, you know, it's not a licensing deal where we put a castle on a bottle or on a cigar label. It's really about telling the true story of Highclere, and Lord and Lady Carnarvon are actively involved in both the cigar and the the gin every day. And so it's a very real project from a very real place, from a family of all of us being very real people.
So if we have an event at Corona Cigar or Davidoff store in Tampa, we're going to have Lord Carnarvon ride in on a Carnarvon tank. That's going to be what our mission is for. He's going to be in the.
I'm going to look this up and see.
You're going to be in the commander's cupola with your cigar and your gin, and we're going to drive you straight to the front door, roll out the red carpet.
I'm going. If there's a tank,
Adam knows what I'd really like is to have a horse one day fast enough to run in the Breeders' Cup, and then I could come over and really celebrate with some gin. That'd be
There
cool.
you go.
yeah.
And I'm your local person to make it all happen.
All right, Luis, go find
You're
us that
driving
tank.
the tank, man. You're driving the tank.
You're on tank duty.
Listen,
I
I've driven with Louis before. He's got quite a powerful machine that he drives me around Florida in. And if we put him behind the wheel of that tank, I'm not sure I'm going to make it alive.
If we
You're in a
can't
tank.
find
You're
a
going to
tank,
be the only one who makes it out alive.
Yeah.
You will make it alive, Adam.
Listen,
Everybody
if we
else
can't-
wants.
if you can't get the tank, we're going to get a de Havilland Otter, and we're going to have Lord Carnarvon fly in and land right in front of the store. That'll suffice.
That'd
We
be
just gotta do something.
fantastic. That'd be amazing.
Just be careful. You're landing in Florida in a tank. They may think we're getting invaded again. So just a heads up.
It's Florida. We're used to that stuff. This thing.
It's true.
Yeah, it is Florida. We are fine with it.
Yeah. We had a question from one of the viewers in the chat, and he wanted to know what some of the seasonal crops are still at the estate today. We talked about the botanicals and the oats, but are there other crops that are continually grown now?
Yes, so there's another crop which is very associated with distilling, which is spring barley, which grows fantastically on the chalk soils here. So we're still growing that, and that goes up to Scotland to make Scotch. And Adam and I have some ideas of maybe doing that one day in the
There you go.
and also we grow a fair amount of winter wheat, which is turned milling wheat for bread.
Very nice. That kind of leads into another question I was going to get to was, what are some of the future projects that you may be able to mention, maybe on the cigar side or on the spirit side? Because the company is a spirits company, and gin is the initial launch. But do you have other plans for other offerings? Maybe that Scotch that was mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had the idea of a whiskey. Lord Carnarvon and I are both big fans of all whiskeys, really, and brown spirits as well. And so, we are now exploring and experimenting with. I've gotten my hands on some very rare 50 and 100 and 150-year-old Armagnac barrels.
Oh.
Some wonderful Scotch barrels. As a matter of fact, Louis and his family in Cognac, Louis' grandfather was a renowned boutique cognac producer, has just given us 5 50-year-old cognac barrels. So we're creating a collection of some of the rarest barrels of cognac, Armagnac, and Scotch. And we're going to be working with a wonderful castle and estate up in Scotland that we're working with now. I won't mention any details quite yet.
Sure.
For aging this on the estate. So for a touch of Scotland in our barrel-aged gin. I think barrel-aged gin is very exciting. There's a great future in it.
Sure.
It adds a bit of whiskey and age and complexity, vanillins, flavor profiles that we like to the soft and creamy botanical crispness that is Highclere Castle Gin. So that's the first thing. And regarding cigars, Nick and I are, we get together on occasion and we have our brainstorming sessions, typically over gin and cigars. Mm-hmm. And we've got a very big moment coming in 2022 in the 100-year anniversary of the discovery by Lord Carnarvon's great-grandfather and Howard Carter of King Tutankhamun's tomb. And so we have to celebrate that in a very momentous way with both the gin and the cigar. And so right now, those are the two things we're really looking at is we'll do a limited edition cigar in a very, very special, unique packaging. And we're going to be doing a limited edition barrel-aged gin also in a very special packaging. We're working hard this upcoming year to design that. We'll probably do a small run of it. It'll be some very unique stuff. But as you can tell from how we've gone so far, this conversation, it'll be fairly well thought out.
Very nice. And I know that
Jeff grows tobacco in Florida.
I know, Jeff. Yeah,
I'm just saying, he's right here. You should talk to this guy.
As a matter of fact,
Jeff, should too.
I did learn that about you this morning, and I was really actually happy and impressed. And I'm hoping next time I come out, I'd love to see the farm.
We'd love to have you at the farm. And I thought it was interesting. Lord Carnarvon's talking about racehorses, and our farm is just about 45 minutes south of Ocala, Florida, where all the thoroughbred horses are bred and raised, and a lot of Kentucky Derby hopefuls come out of that area. And we end up, you pull oats from that stuff. We actually bring prized racehorse horse manure down to our fields and till that into the ground. So I like to say we have the most
complete the cycle, haven't you?
Yeah, we have the most expensive horse manure fertilizer in the world coming from these multi-million-dollar racehorses. But yeah, it's a fascinating area where we're at.
Jeff, if I'm correct, your FSG tobacco is grown with American Pharoah's horse fertilizer, who won the Triple Crown. So this is Triple Crown tobacco. That's
that's right. If anything that comes out of those Ocala horse farms. So it's wonderful. And the Breeders' Cup, do they have any British horses running? Is that,
yes,
I keep seeing these.
If they good enough, they can qualify. And in fact, a British filly won one of the sprint races recently.
Oh.
So do you have a training facility on the grounds at Highclere?
Not nowadays. In my great grandfather's time, he had about a sort of a mile track here for that, but we don't nowadays. But the ground, the chalky ground is great for developing the horse's bones. So you can breed foals and yearlings here with the right bone structure. That's why people do it in this part of the world.
Very nice.
Oh.
That's probably why Ocala as well, because there's lots of limestone quarries around that area as well.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
All right, gentlemen. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, Adam, you got a lot of things to work with. You got King Tut, you got racehorses, you got ghost stories, you got everything in the world you could put together the next brand. All I got to say is, when you come up with this stuff, we're going to sell it.
Well, thank you for that. Really do appreciate your support. It does. Highclere's like it's in a way, it's the easiest palette you could ever want to paint with, and I'm very much a creator, and that's what excites me. And it's been an amazing, fun, and enjoyable journey. And what I care about most is that people feel the same way when they try what we're doing with the cigars, with the gin. They're really appreciating deeply the thought that's gone into it. Ultimately, the flavors is all we care about, and the story that wraps around it. So appreciate your support of what we're doing big time, and we'll looking forward to seeing you in person as well.
And hopefully one day when I'm visiting my wife's family up in Scotland, we're going to make a journey south and have one of the Highclere Castle Cigars on that smoking patio right behind you there, Lord Carnarvon, and have a nice
brilliant.
night.
We can think back to the glorious day of the cigar launch when we had that incredible summer. It was a perfect day. It was whenever it was, about nearly 80 Fahrenheit out by the trees, and we were all sitting out there smoking, and of course the resin off the cedars is quite close to some of the actual slightly resiny background of the cigar, so they complemented each other brilliantly.
Yeah,
very nice. Well, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. It's been a fantastic evening and discussion. The gin is wonderful. Everybody should give it a try. If you're not a gin drinker, because of whatever reason, you should try this gin because it is very different. And the cigars pair wonderfully with it. So there's that as well. So thank you, Lord Carnarvon, Adam, Louis, Jeff. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you to everybody that watched and will watch on the recording. Go to coronacigar.com, purchase your gin and cigar tasting kit. Get those nice glasses with it as well. And we thank you all for joining us. We will catch you on the next show.
you guys are a lot of fun. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very